A very good morning and a warm welcome to our guests and our attendees. I am Reena Sander, the author of the book, The Moderne India, which is written in Norwegian, and the founder of the NGO, The Modern India. We are hosting this seminar today together with UN Global Compact in Norway and Agderposten. It's a great pleasure to have you all gathered here today to discuss how the world will be redesigned by India. As we all know, the world was last designed 75 years ago, at the same time as Mr. Sam Pitroda was born. The most remarkable phenomenon in Asia in the 21st century is arguably the rise of China and India. Amazingly, the two most populous countries in the world are uplifting millions of their citizens annually from poverty through rapid economic growth. It is expected that India will be the third largest economy in the world by 2030. To discuss how the 440 million Indian millennials will redesign the world, we have with us on the panel today, Kim Gabrielli. He's sitting there. He is the Executive Director at UN Global Compact Norway. We are going to have with us Ms. Shabnam Siddique. She's the Executive Director of UN Global Compact Network in India. And then we have with us a very honorable person, Mr. Sam Pitroda. He's the father of India's communication revolution and internationally recognized telecom inventor, entrepreneur, development thinker, and policymaker who has spent 50 years in information and communication technology and global and national development. We welcome Mr. Sam, who is joining us virtually from the US. I'm now passing on the word to Kim Gabrielli.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rina, and welcome to everybody here and everybody that is out there. And of course, welcome to you, Mr. Sam. It's a great pleasure and honor to have you online with us today. And of course, to see so many people finally in person, it's for all of us, I think, just a great pleasure, just that fact. I think we should also mention that you are also the author of a book called Redesigning the World, Mr. Sam, and that's also the topic a bit for the conversation that you and I are going to have for the next 20 minutes. We are also sneaking in some questions from the audience, so please raise your hand. We'll have a couple introduction questions first, and then if you have any questions, just put up your hands while we are speaking. But I'm going to start. Rina has already introduced some of your background, Mrs. Sam, and I think especially the reality that you created, what we, the telecom revolution and the communication revolution of India that is now so well known outside of the country. I think that's really impressive and a good starting point for discussing how to redesign the world with ideas from both the US and India. And in your book, you are identifying, you're doing an analysis of 75 years, the last 75 years, and what are the tipping points going forward? What do we really have to, what have been the tipping points before, and what have shaped the world we're living in? Could you enlighten us a bit on your thoughts on this and how we can learn from the past to create the future?
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Reena. Greetings from Chicago. It is indeed a special honor and privilege for me to be here with you all. Thank you, Kim, for moderating it. As Reena said, world was last designed just about the time when I was born. I was born in 1942 in British Raj in a small little tribal village in India. That design of the world, led mainly by the US, gave birth to UN, World Bank, IMF, NATO, WTO, WHO, and measurements like GDP, GNP, per capita income. That design was fundamentally based on democracy, human rights, capitalism, consumption, and military. Then world was bipolar. You had Soviet Union and you had US camp. When I look at my own journey of last almost 80 years in the journey of the world, I identify few tipping points which demand that we redesign the world after almost 80 years. First was decolonization of the world. The entire world got decolonized, starting from India with the movement led by Mahatma Gandhi. And the world got decolonized in a very short period of time. Then the rise of China. No one ever thought China would be able to rise the way China has been able to rise. Lift 700 million people out of poverty. Next is India. By 2030, India would be the third largest economic power, and that's not too far. Then came fall of Soviet Union. Right after that, we have seen rise of technology. Technology has become pervasive. With rise of technology came inequality. Very few people have become very rich, and lots of people have remained poor. Then came 9/11. And 9/11 really changed US thinking completely. I believe 9/11 was a response to a unipolar world. And then finally, Corona crisis. Corona crisis put entire world on a halt. I was locked up at home in Chicago for 18 months, and that's the time when I wrote this book. But Corona crisis tells us that we are all interconnected, interwoven, interdependent, interrelated. Nothing in this world can be isolated.
Could I challenge you, Mr. Sam, on the famous quote by Einstein is that you have to learn from the past to create the future. And your book is indeed a lot about the past, a natural consequence of that recognized saying. But how does it look? How does the future look? So what are the tipping points coming to us? And I think we could argue that that Corona is a crisis, but it's also an opportunity, right? So how do you how are you looking to redesigning the world and using the learning from the past?
See, the main learning from Corona crisis is that there are only two important things in this world. One, planet. Planet doesn't need people. People need planet. And we must take care of our planet first. This includes global warming, air we breathe, water we drink, our rivers, our forests, our animals, our birds, bees. We need to really take care of our planet first if we want humanity to survive. Second, at the end of the day, only people matter. No matter where we come from, what we look like, what religion we follow, we must take care of people. And when you look at these two main issues, then you realize that today's global conversation, when all the global leaders meet, is all about trade, is all about economy, is all about geopolitical equations. It is all about superpowers. It's all about command and control. And I think time has come for us to realize that we live in a hyper-connected world. Hyper-connectivity implies democratization of information, decentralization of implementation, and demonetization of services. In a hyper-connected world, we need to think very differently. Unfortunately, we use hyperconnectivity only to do things we have known how to do it, and not really learn to do things we have never done before, so we can take humanity to the next level. And that's why I believe hyperconnectivity is going to be the key to redesign the world.
Okay, let's come back to that in a second. But before that, we named this this seminar "How India is Redesigning the World." So I'm curious about what is the specificity that India brings to the table. What does this great nation?
All I can tell you is I do not speak on behalf of the government of India,
Of course.
but I speak on my personal behalf as someone who was born and raised in India, had the experiences and had the values embedded in the idea of India that Gandhi promoted during independence movement. And I believe time has come for us to really look at the history of India and the values that Eastern India brings, so we can take democracy to inclusion. I think that's the first new principle. That democracy is not good enough if it is not inclusive. Democracy is not inclusive in the US. It is not inclusive in India. It is not inclusive in many places of the world. Second part of the redesign is to take human rights to human needs. Human rights are not good enough. We live in an economy of surplus, but we today think as if we live in an economy of scarcity. We can produce anything today. The question is, what is that we want to produce? So we need to take human rights to human needs. Third, capitalism hasn't worked for everybody. We need new economy, which is bottom up, decentralized, which has new meaning to measurements. GDP is not good enough. We need gross environmental product, gross human development products, and we need totally new way of looking at the economy. Then the consumption. Consumption is not the answer. Answer is conservation and sustainability. And finally, I believe we need to really realize that as human beings, we have evolved to a point we can sort our differences across the table. And we don't need nuclear arms to really sort our differences. So we must begin to focus on non-violence. There is violence everywhere in this world. And in a hyper-connected world, I hope we have evolved to a point we can begin to think of building non-violent world.
And you already started, and in your book as well, you're focusing a lot on e-governance and hyperconnectivity. And you're the right person to think big about this, having revolutionized India in this together with colleagues. So how do you see this? I mean, what sort of role does hyperconnectivity play, and how can we form it? Because it's obviously it's all over the place already, but what could politicians do? What could scientists do to make sure that we get the best out of hyperconnectivity?
I think hyperconnectivity implies not just connection, but it also implies content, curation, context, AI, robotics, all kinds of new technologies, cloud computing. All of these technologies are changing everything we do. These technologies are having huge impact on our education, health, governance, trade, finance, production. Everything we do today is basically obsolete. Hyperconnectivity is giving new meaning to all human activities. And that is part of the redesign. For example, who decided it should take 4 years to get a degree from college? The whole world takes 4 years. Is it really necessary in a hyper-connected world to take 4 years to get a degree? What does degree mean in the future? How is medicine going to change? Health going to change because of hyper-connected world? I can tell you in US, during Corona crisis, we learned that you don't have to go to your doctor every time you have a little problem. Drive for half an hour, wait in doctor's office for an hour. You can get consultation on phone. Many of these solutions are available, but we don't have the right mindset to bring about generational change. So hyperconnectivity is going to have huge impact on even governance architecture. Today we have ministries in silos, and tomorrow's organizational architecture requires that we have task-oriented, flat organizations. So governments are not structured to respond to the reality of the hyper-connected world. So there has to be a change everywhere. And that's what the book is about.
And if you would be a minister today in India with the responsibility for digitalization and hyperconnectivity, what would be the one thing you would carry through to? What is what would have the largest impact?
Education, health, governance, finance. Finance is already hugely impacted with hyperconnectivity because of payment systems. Now, everywhere you go, you can get electronic payment. But all of this is happening in a very subtle way. But while these things are happening, we are not conscious of the grand design. Grand design still remains same. GDP, GNP, per capita income. That grand design has to change. The idea of consumption, idea of capitalism. So I'm really advocating for a change in a grand global design to really take advantage of hyperconnectivity so we can take humanity to the next level.
But don't we have
all we can do is start a new conversation like this. The beginning is to start a new conversation. Today's conversation at a global level, according to me, is all about geopolitical equations. It's all about military hardware, trade. That global conversation has to change.
But could I then challenge you? Because it's fundamentally different how China or India or Norway, for that sake, is talking about how the connectivity and data, of course. So how do you foresee the role of the US, China, India going forward? I mean, how can we make that conversation go with so different starting points?
Yeah, today there are two visions of the world. One is the American vision, which is traditional vision to take democracy forward with American leadership. And second is the Chinese vision, which is based on Belt and Road Initiative. Both of these visions are based on command and control. What I'm proposing is a third vision of the world, which is more based on networking, collaboration, cooperation, co-creation, and communication, and not command and control. We need to bring few more countries at the table to say, hey, we want to change the world. What is the role of Africa? If Africa is going to have 3 billion people by 2050, how do we see Africa? We are indeed living in a hyper-connected world. Borders will not have the same meaning that we have today. What is the idea of digital citizenship? What is digital citizenship? What are the rights and obligations of a digital citizen? These are very complex issues we haven't even addressed because we still think that the old design will remain intact. Until we come to table and think of a third vision of the world, where everyone is treated with respect, dignity, equality, everyone is given a chance at the table. And it is not American design or Chinese design, or that matter, Indian design. it has to be a design based on networking of nations. And we have tools to do it today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sam Pitroda, with this enlightening talk, and also the focus on, let me rephrase it, to the network-based world order, perhaps. Thank you so much for being with us. We are now going on in the program, but thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for inviting. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope you get to read the book, Redesign the World. It is available on Amazon and Google and Apple and all other platforms. Reena, thank you very much for taking initiative, and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful that the world actually is getting connected, as Mr. Sam Pitroda said, how the hyperconnectivity makes it possible for us to sit here today during Corona, people in the audience, Kim and me finally can also meet, and having you guys on the big screen while you are in India, while Mr. Sam Pitroda, the gentleman actually woke up 4 in the night to be here with us. I mean, that's talk about the energy of the man, right? But we are also very honored to have you with us here today, Shabnam. Kim has already made a presentation, so I will start with a question we have for you. Okay, so dear Shabnam, can you tell us what role do you think India will play in redesigning the world?
So I think that is a huge statement to make as such, because there are many big countries, many big players in the world who will all contribute to reshaping the world. But I think where India has been inching towards is that since 2015 onwards, and like irrespective of the pandemic, because nobody had thought about the pandemic as such, we had been steadily moving towards becoming a country that was more digital, that was more self-reliant, and there was a lot of government schemes that had come up which helped support that. So for example, in 2015, we talked about smart cities and Amrit cities, in which 600 cities across the country. Now, when we say 600 cities in India, it's 100 core cities and 500 peripheral cities. So all of them to have good infrastructure, to have digital presence. So all that had started in 2015. And I think that kind of head start helped us in recent times to go ahead. We also have been working on Make in India. So the idea was that India could be a big manufacturing hub. We already have a lot of manufacturing that is happening, but how can we become a manufacturing hub and give competition to other countries? So those kind of things have been happening. We had Skill India, where alternate skills in youth was developed so that the job market could be diversified. And we had Digital India, where at that point of time, the idea was that we need to double the current digital consumerism validity. Now, all those kind of things that we had a head start on helped us in both dealing with the pandemic, in keeping ourselves afloat. And I think those are the kind of things which we could share and work with many countries in Latin America, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, in other places, that would really help in, as you're saying, what was the word?
Redesign.
So I think that is the kind of redesign that could happen the way we have gone, because we have gone step by step, and that really will help many countries to take things and agenda forward.
Yeah, very nice that you listed actually the reforms that the government has started and are implementing. But Ms. Shabnam, you are head of the Indian local UN Global Compact, and I'm curious to hear, because you are working with sustainability and businesses, and you are heading the largest corporate sustainability network. How do you think that the Indian companies will contribute in when it comes to, say, sustainability?
I think they're contributing already in a big way, especially the global compact businesses, because what had happened was that earlier, before perhaps joining the global compact, they had an understanding of what sustainability is in terms of academic knowledge, and in India we have something called as corporate social responsibility. So linking the social responsibility to sustainability and doing something. But with a global compact and with set agendas, we have targets, we have ambitions. I think they are really picked up. And at the global compact, we have many global impact initiatives that are run throughout the world. So all local networks can participate, and many do. I think the most recent one that we launched was the Climate Ambition Accelerator, because as we see the kind of devastation happening around the world, and I think the most recent is Japan as of now. In fact, this is the first time that when we are speaking at conferences, every time the country is different. So before Japan, it was Turkey, and before Turkey, it was something else. So it's been catastrophic, and we wanted to put a cap on 1.5, but that's not happening. So how do you scale up? How do you really reshape your complete agenda? So that is what Global Compact has been doing with its companies. It is helping them develop tools. It is helping them implement, monitor, and then evaluate. And I think those kind of initiatives, and you'll be surprised that businesses are lapping up. So they really want to do the actual work, but earlier they did not know how to. So that is with climate. We are doing a lot of work on. So we talk about gender balance in our end of the world, but we're talking about target gender equality. So how do you raise the ambition? How do you make new targets? Every company will have a different target, and then we help them achieve those targets. So I think that kind of hand-holding, and all this is done through a lot of one-to-one engagement. So we have an academy which is exclusively for members, in which we talk about sustainable finance, we talk about business and human rights, we talk about gender and skilling. But we also have the gender impact, global impact initiatives, which is again for members, but we help people on board as members before we take it forward. So I think those kind of direct hand-holding and guiding the businesses, and the CII that we call it, the CA, Climate Ambition Accelerator. In that, it's open for all kind of companies, the starters who have not started any work, the middle companies who have started some work, but they have not able to monitor or report on it, and the ones who have scaled up and need to report and at a global level. So it's for everyone, and that I think really helps at the global compact level, because we keep evaluating what is required for businesses and take things forward.
That's wonderful to hear. I'm at least very happy to hear that things are happening on ground, that there is that much interest for companies as well, and that you have your own in-house program to help companies. That's really good to hear that you have the tools. Let's continue to talk about finance and business. Do you think business and finance will run ahead of authorities and governments in reshaping the world?
In a technical way, they can, but depending on the kind of governments, of the day in different countries, there are many countries with a lot of regulations, and I think those regulations will stop them. But in terms of potential, in terms of the fact that they can take it forward, definitely business and finance can run ahead of authorities, because that is the premise on which Global Compact was established, and which every subsequent Secretary General has talked about, that businesses have come within the UN system because they have a lot of the out of the box thinking. They have innocent, they have a risk appetite that they can take, which governments cannot. So those kind of things business and finance can take. And if government and business can work together to see what works or what can go ahead, I think that will be an ideal synergy.
Very good, very good. And I'm also thinking that you already touched up on it. What do your organization and your 13,000 corporate members do to shape the future? It's
So
a very
they are doing a lot these days. In fact, now in the last 1.5 years, because of the virtual world, we are much more interconnected than before, and across a lot of verticals. So both at the global level and at the India level, there's a lot of conversations that have happened where people are learning from each other. In fact, this is the first time that India has had. So Global Compact has a program called the SDG Pioneers, where they choose 10 people every year as pioneers of a particular aspect to take things forward. So India had the first pioneer, and the pioneer was on renewable energy and gender. So those kind of ambassadors that go ahead really shape the world, because what happens with businesses is that when they start to speak about their practical steps, they're very direct. So they'll tell you exactly how they started, where were the challenges, where they have come. So I think that aspect makes a lot of difference. And the peer group learning that happens is phenomenal in these places.
Very interesting. I have a last question for you, Shabnam. What role do you think digitalization will play, and especially for India as a driving force? We're keeping in mind that India has 440 million millennials.
So digitalization is huge because now, especially with the pandemic, even the small kids have been studying on iPads and mobile phones and all that, and not only in cities but across the country, whether it is rural areas or other places. So I think digitalization will play a huge role even within our companies, and especially the Indian companies, which have been very traditional in saying, are thinking of working on a hybrid model, because what they have realized is the kind of waste of infrastructure and logistics that is happening by a 5-day week in office is quite a bit. And if we can save that and invest that somewhere else, then that works. So digitalization, I think, will define the next decade of where we go. But a big challenge for digitalization also is the fact that we need to take care of people, vulnerable groups, women and others, so that they don't get left behind. Because a lot of the technology that will be on demand, or a lot of the technology that might the market might require, would have a very particular set of skill set which not everybody would have. So I think we need to invest more in digitalization. We need to see what kind of digital world we want, and then forge ahead.
Please allow me to ask somebody in the audience if they would have a question for you, because we have 3 minutes left. Er det noen her som har lyst til å stille Shabnam et spørsmål? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Please join us on the stage. There is somebody who would like to ask a question. I've invited them to the stage.
Yeah.
Hi, madam. It's an honor to meet you. I'm Srish on behalf of Tours from the Netherlands and as well as Child Press. I'm actually from, my family's from India. I'm from, family's from Chennai, Tamil Nadu. And I'm curious on, I have a question on sustainability, because you mentioned the initiatives that Global Compact has done to try to move its corporate partners in a more sustainable manner. And I heard that one of the partners, for example, was Tata. But as we know, like Tata has also headquarters in the Netherlands, and it is one of the biggest polluters of like CO2 per ton per capita, even in the Netherlands compared to Shell or BP. Do you think companies like Tata and all the other corporate partners of Global Compact, do you think that these corporations can move in a sustainable manner that's quick enough with these initiatives?
I think you'd be surprised that In India, Tata is known as the best company with the best policies and best practices. But having said that, I think a lot of companies are doing that, and that is why, as Global Compact, we are setting them targets to reduce, whether it is plastic, whether it is waste, whether it is any kind of pollutants releasing into the sea, releasing into land, and all that. Because that kind of accountability then becomes crucial to take things forward. And I think that's where the role of Global Compact comes, both as a hand-holding organization, but also as a monitoring body. And for us, what works best is the peer pressure. So for example, we don't need to physically go and check whether Tata is polluting X place, but the peer, the peer companies from there, they will report that this is happening, and then we'll ask questions to the pollutants. And this recently happened with one of the companies, Indian companies, which had a lot of human rights violations in Myanmar. And then they were called to talk, to a tribunal and ask questions. So I think that kind of accountability is most important, because earlier everything went scot-free and nobody, a good PR would make a good company. But now with organizations like Global Compact and many other organizations like us, there's a lot of potential to have monitoring, evaluation. And whenever you see anything that is not correct, please write to us. So we'll take cognizance and we'll take action.
Thank you so much, Shabnam, and thank you for joining us. I'm sure there are others who would like to ask questions, but the session today has come to an end. A big thank you to you, Shabnam. I would also like to thank all our guests, and especially the panel members, Kim and Mr. Sam, and you, and each one of you are present here to join this for such an impactful session. We really hope that India's contribution to redesign the world serves the best interests of the people and the world as a whole, as it always has been the case with India. A big thank you to all of you, and I wish you all a very nice day ahead.
Thank you so much.